A cruel ex-husband invites his struggling ex-wife to his lavish wedding to humiliate her, only to watch her arrive with a billionaire and destroy his pride without saying a single hateful word. The grand pavilion in Atlanta glittered like something pulled from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished marble floors. Soft violin music floated through the air. 300 guests filled the white and gold hall, dressed in silk, diamonds, and tailored suits. Cameras were positioned at every perfect angle. Social media influencers whispered into their phones, already capturing the wedding of the year. It was flawless. At the altar stood Chinedu Oyora, smiling for the crowd, adjusting the cuffs of his custom suit. To anyone watching, he looked like a man who had won at life. Wealthy, confident, graded. But his eyes kept drifting, not toward the aisle, not toward the bride, toward the front row. One single empty chair sat there, decorated with a white ribbon. Reserved, intentional, waiting. He had placed it there himself. Because this wedding was not just a celebration. It was a performance. And every performance needs an audience, especially one person in particular. His ex-wife, the woman he once called nothing. He imagined her walking in quietly, sitting in that seat, staring at the bride's expensive gown, the overflowing flowers, the guests who used to be hers too. He imagined her shrinking. He imagined her regretting everything. She'll finally see what she lost, he thought. The bride, Vivian, stood nearby in a gown worth more than most homes. Her makeup was flawless, her smile rehearsed. She leaned closer to him. "Are you nervous?" she whispered softly. Chinedu forced a chuckle. Not at all. But his jaw tightened as he glanced again at the empty chair. 5 minutes until the ceremony. Still empty. Why wasn't she here yet? The guests chatted, unaware of the quiet storm building behind his smile. To them, this was romance. A fresh start. A beautiful love story. But deep inside, this was about victory. About proving something. About showing the woman who left him that she would never do better. 10 minutes passed. The violinists began the entrance music. The officiant cleared his throat. Still, the chair remained empty. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Was she too ashamed to come? Too embarrassed? Or worse, had she moved on without caring? The thought unsettled him more than he expected. The bride began walking down the aisle. Guests stood, phones raised, smiles wide. And yet, even in this perfect moment, Chinedu's eyes searched the back doors of the hall. Because this wasn't just a wedding. It was a test. And he was desperate to win. But sometimes, when you invite someone to watch your triumph, you forget they might arrive with a different ending in mind. 3 weeks before the wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, a white envelope slid under the door of a small 2-bedroom apartment in College Park. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fabric and starch. A sewing machine hummed steadily near the window, its needle moving with patient rhythm. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains, falling gently across spools of thread arranged in careful rows. Adiz wiped her hands on a cloth and walked toward the envelope. Heavy paper, gold lettering, expensive. She didn't need to read the return address to know who it was from. Her fingers paused for just a second before opening it. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Chinedu Oyora and Vivian Audi." Her eyes moved slowly over the elegant script. October 14th. The Grand Pavilion. Atlanta, Georgia. And then, at the bottom, written in blue ink, handwritten, personal, deliberate, "I saved you a front row seat. Come see what a real wife looks like." The room felt suddenly smaller. The sewing machine was still humming, but it sounded distant now, like it belonged to another life. For a moment, the world held its breath. Was this closure, or cruelty wrapped in gold paper? Her throat tightened, but no tears came. Not one. Instead, something steadier settled inside her chest. "He still thinks I need his approval." From the kitchen table, her twin daughters were arguing softly over cereal. One of them called out, "Mama, what's that?" Adiz folded the invitation carefully. "Nothing important, baby," she said gently. "Finish your breakfast." Nothing important. But she knew it was important. Not because of him, but because of what it represented. For years, his voice had lived in her head. You're not enough. You're nothing without me. You can't survive alone. She had believed those words once. Believed them so deeply they shaped her silence. Now here he was again, trying to reopen the wound. Trying to remind her of where she stood. Or where he thought she stood. She placed the invitation on the counter beside her sewing machine. The gold thread she had been working with caught the light, glowing softly. She picked it up and ran it through her fingers. Strong. Fine. Unbreakable. Her heart no longer raced with fear. It beat with clarity. He wanted her to sit in that front row and shrink. But what if she didn't shrink? What if she walked in standing tall? A slow breath escaped her lips. This invitation was not just a reminder of her past. It was a test of who she had become. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the scars and sleepless nights, something powerful began to rise. Not anger, not revenge, resolve. There was a time when she believed he was her miracle. He had walked into her life confident and charming, wearing expensive suits and an even more expensive smile. He brought flowers for no reason. He called her different. He told her she was talented, beautiful, rare. And when he said, "You deserve the world," she believed him. The wedding had been small, simple, promises whispered in a courthouse hallway. He told her a bigger celebration would come later, when his business grew. It never came. What did come was slower, quieter. The comments started first. "That dress makes you look cheap. My mother cooks better than you. Sewing isn't a real career." Each sentence was light on its own. Easy to dismiss. Easy to forgive. But repetition is powerful. And slowly her confidence began to thin. The man who once praised her hands began mocking them. The man who once called her strong began calling her emotional. Was this love? Or control disguised as love? When their twin daughters were born, she thought things would soften. That fatherhood would make him gentler. Instead, he became colder. He controlled the bank account, questioned every dollar she spent, reminded her that she had no income of her own, that the house was in his name. "You're lucky I take care of you," he would say casually. Lucky. She stopped sewing, stopped dreaming about her own fashion studio, stopped meeting friends. He didn't forbid it directly. He just made it uncomfortable enough that she chose isolation. Then came the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the locked screens. The truth arrived in the form of text messages from other women. When she confronted him, he did not apologize. "And what are you going to do about it?" he asked calmly. The words hit harder than the betrayal. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I can't survive alone." For 2 more years, she stayed. For the children. For hope. For fear. Until one night, the shouting grew louder. The anger closer. His hand lifted in frustration. He didn't strike her. But he could have. And that was enough. That night, while he slept, she packed a small diaper bag. She carried her daughters out into the darkness. No plan. No savings. Just courage stitched together with desperation. She slept in her car for 3 nights. 3 long nights wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, she felt something unexpected. Relief. The house had been large. But it had never been home. The apartment was small. Not the kind you dream about. Just 4 pale walls, thin curtains, and a kitchen that barely fit a table for 3. But it was safe. And for the first time in years, it was hers. During the day, she was simply Mom. She braided tiny pigtails before school. She packed lunches with whatever she could afford. She smiled even when her heart felt tired. The twins would cling to her legs and laugh, unaware of the storms their mother was learning to survive. At night, when the girls finally slept, the real battle began. She pulled out her old sewing machine, the one he once called a useless hobby. Its metal surface was scratched, its pedals stiff, but it still worked. And so did she. The hum of the needle became her midnight anthem. Fabric was cheap. Orders were rare. Sometimes she stayed awake until 2 in the morning stitching simple dresses for neighbors. Sometimes clients delayed payment. Sometimes they never paid at all. There were nights when exhaustion wrapped around her shoulders heavier than any blanket. There were mornings when she counted coins before buying milk. How long can a woman carry everything alone? She felt the humiliation too. The whispers from relatives. The pitying looks at school meetings. The subtle judgment in every, "Are you managing?" Cannot break. Not now. So she didn't. She learned to fix her own sink. Learned to stretch one meal into two. Learned that strength is not loud, it is patient. Slowly, something began to change. Her designs improved. Her stitches became cleaner. Word spread about the single mother who makes beautiful custom pieces. A boutique owner placed a small order. Then another. The first time she held a full week's earnings in her hands, her fingers trembled. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The exhaustion never disappeared, but it transformed. It became proof. Every dark circle under her eyes was a medal of survival. Every rejection letter was a lesson. Every insult from the past became fuel. She no longer sewed to survive. She sewed to rise. The girls would sometimes wake up and find her asleep at the table, fabric still in her hands. They would kiss her cheek and whisper, "Mama works hard." They had no idea how hard. But one day they would. And in the quiet of that small apartment, beneath the soft glow of a single lamp, a broken woman slowly rebuilt herself, thread by thread, dream by dream. No aplausos, no recognition, just resilience. It was an ordinary afternoon. She had gone to the fabric store looking for one specific thing, gold thread. Not the bright, artificial kind. The soft, warm gold that catches light gently. She had an important order and every detail mattered. The store smelled like cotton and dust. Rolls of fabric stood tall like silent witnesses. She scanned the shelves carefully, comparing shades, holding them against the light. Looking for something special? The voice was calm, steady. She turned. He wasn't dressed in anything impressive. No loud confidence. No sarpsut. Just a simple shirt, sleeves slightly rolled up, and kind eyes that did not rush to judge her. "Yes," she replied softly. "Gold thread, but not too shiny." He nodded, as if he understood more than she had said. "Try this one," he suggested, handing her a spool from a lower shelf. "It holds its color well." She tested it between her fingers. It was perfect. He didn't hover, didn't flirt, didn't try to impress her with stories about himself. Instead, he asked about her design. He listened when she explained embroidery patterns. He seemed genuinely interested. When was the last time someone listened without trying to control the conversation? She felt something unfamiliar. They ended up standing there longer than expected, talking about fabrics, small businesses, and the strange comfort of creating something with your own hands. He mentioned he owned a small textile supply company. Nothing grand, just steady work. There was no arrogance in his tone, only quiet pride. As she walked toward the register, he said gently, "There's a cafe next door. If you're not in a rush, maybe we could continue this conversation." For a second, fear flickered inside her. Coffee meant openness. Openness meant risk. What if this is just another illusion? But his eyes held no pressure, only patience. So she nodded. The cafe was simple. Warm lighting, 2 cups of coffee between them. The conversation flowed easily. He spoke about values, about honesty in business, about how he believed success should never cost someone their peace. She noticed something important. He did not interrupt. He did not compete. He did not belittle her dreams. Instead, he asked, "What do you want your brand to become?" No one had asked her that in years. And when she answered, her voice did not shake. Coffee turned into shared laughter. Laughter turned into exchanged numbers. Not rushed, not dramatic, just natural. As she walked home that evening, gold thread in her bag, she felt something lighter in her chest. This was different. Not fireworks, not obsession, just safety. And sometimes safety is the beginning of real love. The evening felt ordinary. They were sitting on a quiet park bench, watching her daughters chase pigeons across the grass. The sky was painted in soft orange light. peaceful moment, the kind she once believed only existed in movies. He had been different from the beginning, consistent, gentle, present. But that night, there was something thoughtful in his silence. "I need to tell you something," he said calmly. Her heart tightened. In her experience, those words never led to good news. She turned toward him slowly. "What is it?" He looked at her the way he always did, steady, respectful. "The textile company I mentioned." He paused. "It's part of a larger group. I'm the CEO." She blinked. "A larger group?" she repeated quietly. He nodded. "A global firm. We operate in 14 countries." She stared at him, trying to connect this man, the one who carried her grocery bags, who sat on her small couch drinking tea, with the image of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. "You're wealthy?" she asked carefully. He gave a small smile. "Yes." The word hung in the air. For a moment old fears rushed back. Wealth had once come with power, with control, with humiliation disguised as generosity. Why hide something like that? He seemed to sense her thoughts. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me without the title," he said softly. "Without the money. I've seen how people change when they hear numbers. I didn't want that with you." She searched his face for arrogance, for superiority. There was none. Only sincerity. "I've watched you build everything from nothing," he continued. "You didn't ask me for help. You didn't lean on me financially. You stand on your own. That's rare." Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from something deeper. Respect. He saw my strength, not my struggle. He reached for her hand, not possessively, just gently. "I need you to know something," he said. "If you ever choose to walk beside me, it will be as an equal, not as someone I rescue. And I promise you this. You will never be humiliated again. Not by me. Not in my name. Not in my presence." The promise felt heavier than wealth. Tears gathered in her eyes, not because he was rich, but because for the first time power did not feel threatening. Felt safe. She realized something important in that moment. Money had once been used to silence her. Now it was being used to protect her dignity. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across her face. The same soft gold she once searched for in thread. And this time, the shine did not blind her. It warmed her. The wedding venue shimmered with crystal lights and polished marble floors. Laughter echoed through the grand hall. Guests adjusted their designer outfits, sipping champagne, waiting for the evening's spectacle. Inside, her ex-husband stood near the entrance, greeting people with a proud smile. This night, he believed, would prove something. That he had moved on. That he had upgraded. That he had won. Then the sound came. Low. Smooth. Powerful. Heads turned toward the driveway as a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop in front of the entrance. Its engine purred with quiet authority. Whispers spread across the crowd. "Who is that?" The driver stepped out first. Then two bodyguards moved with calm precision, opening the rear door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a gold heel touched the ground. She stepped out slowly, gracefully, draped in a flowing gold gown that shimmered under the evening lights. The fabric moved like liquid sunlight around her. Her posture was straight. Her chin lifted, not in arrogance, but in quiet confidence. Beside her, he emerged. Tailored suit, calm expression. The billionaire who had once stood in a fabric store offering her simple advice about thread. But tonight, there was no hiding. Flashbulbs began to flicker as guests pulled out their phones. Conversations died mid-sentence. The music inside the hall softened into awkward silence. She did not rush. She did not look around nervously. She walked as if she had always belonged there. Each step echoed like a statement. Her ex-husband's smile faded slowly as recognition settled across his face. Confusion turned into disbelief. Disbelief turned into something sharper. Regret. Could he even recognize the woman he once tried to break? She met his eyes briefly. Not with anger. Not with revenge. With peace. "You tried to humiliate me, but you built the stage for my return." The billionaire gently offered his arm. She accepted it naturally. Not because she needed support, but because partnership felt right. The room felt smaller now. The woman who once left with nothing but her daughters now entered like royalty. Not because of the gown, not because of the car, but because she had rebuilt herself when no one was watching. Every whisper in the room carried the same question. How did she rise so high? She did not answer. She simply walked forward. And in that silence, her presence spoke louder than any words ever could. The hall that once buzzed with excitement now held a tense, electric stillness. Guests froze mid-conversation, sensing something monumental was about to unfold. She paused at the center aisle, the gold of her gown catching every glimmer of light, and faced the man who had once tried to humiliate her. He looked confident, almost smug, expecting a gasp of admiration or fear. Instead, he met a quiet, steady gaze. A gaze that held neither fear nor anger, but clarity. "You remember these words?" she began, her voice calm but sharp, repeating his old insults with perfect precision. The remarks about her ambition, her worth, her failures. Each word landed like a pebble dropped into still water, sending ripples through the room. His lips parted, but no sound came. The crowd shifted uneasily, sensing the shift in power. "Is this the same man who once thought he could control my life?" she thought. She took a slow step forward. "You told me I would never amount to anything, that I would always be beneath you, that I would be humiliated and forgotten." The guests murmured among themselves. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded the moment, capturing not just her words, but the strength behind them. Across the room, the bride looked at her fiancé with dawning realization. The man she was about to marry, confident, charming, powerful, stood exposed. Not in wealth, not in status, but in character. The woman he had tried to break now radiated something he could never manufacture. Resilience and grace. I cannot marry someone who speaks this way," the bride whispered, stepping back. Shock registered across her face, then certainty. She turned to the officiant and called off the wedding. The groom's smile faltered, then disappeared entirely. His voice shook as he tried to respond, but the words felt small, hollow, meaningless in the face of the room's silence. She looked around at the crowd, friends, strangers, even family, all watching the unraveling of a man who had believed humiliation could elevate him. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The scene itself spoke volumes. "You thought I would fall. But here I am, unshaken, unbroken." Her hand brushed lightly against the arm of the billionaire at her side. A silent promise that this moment was not about revenge, but justice, dignity, and closure. The room exhaled as the truth settled. Power is not in control. It is in integrity. The groom, once so sure of his triumph, now understood too late what he had lost. The laughter, the cheers, the admiration he had sought, all gone. He was left alone with the echo of his own cruelty. Months had passed since the wedding that changed everything. The city skyline glimmered outside her studio windows, reflecting the bright future she had carved from the ashes of her past. Her fashion brand, once a dream sketched on scraps of paper, now thrived, elegant lines, bold colors, and designs that spoke of strength and resilience. Every day was a testament to the woman she had become. She worked late into the night, her daughters asleep in the next room, the soft hum of sewing machines accompanying her thoughts. Could I have imagined this life when I left with nothing? She wondered, smiling at how far she had come. Her connection with the billionaire, once a quiet spark in a fabric store, had grown into a steady flame. They shared laughter over coffee, whispered plans for the future, and celebrated small victories together. Love, she realized, was not in grand gestures or wealth alone. It was in trust, support, and understanding. Meanwhile, news of her ex-husband's downfall trickled through society circles. The empire he had clung to with arrogance crumbled under mismanagement and scandal. He had lost more than money. He had lost respect, relationships, and the illusion of power. But she felt no joy in his defeat. She had discovered something far greater. The quiet, unshakable confidence that came from knowing her own worth. The runway lights shone brightly that evening as her latest collection debuted. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the room, and her daughters watched from the front row, eyes wide with pride. She stood tall, her gown flowing like a river of gold, embodying every lesson learned, every hardship overcome. Is this the life I deserved all along? She thought, a hint of awe in her heart. The answer was clear. Yes, it was more than she had ever imagined. She glanced at the crowd, at the journalists, at the world that had once doubted her. They didn't see the nights of struggle, the tears shed in quiet apartments, the sacrifices made. What they did see now was the radiance of someone who had refused to let cruelty define her. In that moment, she understood the true power of revenge. It was not in retaliation, not in shame or humiliation. It was in rising, in creating a life so full, so vibrant, that the echoes of the past could no longer touch her. She had won, not by tearing anyone down, but by lifting herself higher than ever before. Her daughters ran to her, wrapping tiny arms around her legs. She held them close, smiling, knowing that she had built not just a brand or a life, but a legacy of resilience and dignity.